All right, well, our next couple presenters are here. They're a couple of our newest regional administrators for WSDOT here. And I asked them, it was this even last meeting and some of our executive board meetings prior to this meeting, we've talked with Mike over here and others on how can we raise a public awareness, legislative, impact, or get legislators pumped up about some large preservation or maintenance projects, right? We always see that the brand new shiny object always has a ribbon cutting or, news there, or legislators show up for that type of thing. About what can we raise? How can we raise awareness and raise lift up these preservation and maintenance projects? So we've got Chris and Brian here. They're going to give us a couple short presentations on some of the stuff they're working on their regions. And I will ask Chris, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
All right, we'll do.
Yeah.
Quicker. Thank you. Thanks, Billy. So like Billy said, my name is Chris Keifenheim. I'm the regional administrator for North Central Region. So that's the north central part of the state. I'm based out of Wenatchee. And so kind of like Billy was saying, for our region, we're primarily a rural region. We're as rural as any region in the state. And so preservation and maintenance is really the bread and butter, the work we do. That's the face of us as far as the public sees us. So Billy asked me to highlight some of the work we're doing to spotlight that. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. So we've had a number of challenges here, as everyone knows, as Senator King talked about, Connecting Washington, Move Ahead Washington both added some preservation funding to all regions. And so in our region in North Central, we were really faced with a challenge where we had coming into 2023, this past year, had a challenge to deliver the work that we had. We have a limited staff. We've got consultants on board, but actually they're getting maxed out. So we're looking at ways to maximize the amount of work we can deliver with the people and the constraints that we have. Program last year in 2023, we had about a dozen preservation projects, actually, for context. With the changes that the legislature's made in this last session, our region doesn't have any preservation projects this next year or for the remainder of this biennium. That's pretty consistent around the state. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the work we did this last year and specifically about one project. So one of the things that we took a look at is how can we really maximize the amount of work we're going to get done in this year and the benefit to the public and preserve as much of the roadways as we can with the funding we've got. So we took a look at our work and typically we'll have, like I said, about a dozen preservation projects. So one of the things that we looked at is can we bundle some of this work together to reduce the administration work, make it more efficient, both from a contracting perspective and for the public going through our work zones and get a lot of work done in a small amount of time. So what we did is we took 3 projects that we had planned for construction within about a year and combined them into one large preservation project. So we had a project in the city of Leavenworth. It's been almost 20 years since we last paved through Leavenworth. So we've been working with Leavenworth for a long time on this. They are an excited partner and advocate for this work. In fact, they added some work and paid for it under our project as well. And as many of you know, I'm sure you've all been to Leavenworth. It thrives on tourists, people coming to town, spending their money. And the road out there on US 2, which goes right through town, we had potholes, we had cracking pavement all over, and it was a deterrent to bringing people to town. So they were definitely excited about us getting a project done here for the first time in almost 20 years. We had another project paving between Leavenworth and Big Y, which is just to the east of Leavenworth there, and then another one on the north side of Blewett Pass. So we combined all 3 of these into one project, which is about $10 million contract. And just over 40,000 tons of pavement done in that. So Central Washington Asphalt got the contract and was the contractor this past summer for the work. So, like I mentioned, our region is rural. We don't have a lot of the 520s or the 405s, some of these mega projects that we oftentimes have ribbon cuttings for. But the work we do is really important to our communities. So we like to try and find ways where we can celebrate that work, we can spotlight the work that's done, and just raise awareness, like Billy said, to the work we're doing and the work that still needs to be done. wanted to look for ways to provide an opportunity for the public to celebrate this, to celebrate it for our employees, and also have a chance for our local elected officials, both local and state, to have a part in that and celebrate the work that we're getting done. So also this year, Link Transit built a roundabout just on the west side of Leavenworth on US 2 as well. So we talked with the local transit agency, say, hey, would you be willing to have a ribbon cutting with us and celebrate the preservation work we're doing, as well as the safety and improvement work that you took care of on the state highway? And they were all for it. So I mentioned I'm the regional administrator. I've been doing this job now for almost 3 months. So one of the things that I've been doing for the last 3 months is I've been getting out and talking with our local legislators, talking about transportation needs, talking about what they're hearing, what I'm hearing, the priorities in the region. And obviously for our region, preservation and maintenance is one of the big things. And so one of the things I asked them is, hey, would you be willing to be part of a ribbon cutting and, just highlight some of this work, the important work that we're getting done? And every single one of them, we've got primarily 3 districts in my region and parts of smaller ones, but all 9 of them I talked to were totally on board and excited about it. So that's what we did. In October, actually, we held a ribbon cutting. You can see it here. It was attended by the public, contractor, DOT representatives, the mayor of Leavenworth, Link Transit, obviously with the roundabout. And then we had Representative Gaynor, who's on the state House Transportation Committee, and then Senator Hawkins, actually, from the Senate Transportation Committee, talked. You can see him there on the bottom right, talking at the event. And it was great to hear Senator Hawkins talk. He talked not only about the great work we've done, but also the work that we still need to do and we still need to fund. And so it's just a good time to celebrate the work we've done, really spotlight that, and also 2, identify that there's more work to be done and, just raise awareness for that. But really it was about just kind of celebrating the work we've done. And I think we've received a number of comments, both from the public and local agencies after that, saying, hey, this was great. When you do a project through our area, let's try and do something like that as well. So, just wanted to bring that to you, talk a little bit about what we're doing to kind of spotlight the needs there and the work we're doing here in our region.
Mr. President, just a clarifying question.
Yeah.
Chris, thank you. That was excellent. 12 projects for the 2023 paving year.
Yep,
And you said 0
that's correct.
for 2024.
Yep.
And the next biennium.
And the
Oh,
remainder
and
is
25.
Yep. And that's pretty consistent for not only our region, but all regions around the
Is
state.
that how DOT plans things? They do it that way, or what was your plan?
So we had a plan based on, we've had Washington when it was passed for this biennium 23-25, which was front loading our preservation work and then continuing that on out. Then this last session, the actual preservation budget got lowered for this biennium. So actually all of our preservation funds statewide were allocated for 23-25 by this past August. So we've got a couple of projects that are holdover to next year, but no new projects starting this August through the end of the biennium, this biennium.
Okay, so you advanced those projects thinking they'd be backfilled. The backfill didn't happen.
Well, we advanced them based on the budget start going into 2020, prior to that, and then it was reduced last biennium or last session.
Surprise.
Chris, we talked about this last year on trying to get excitement around maintenance and preservation. I applaud you for doing that. We've been trying to figure out how to make maintenance and preservation sexy, baby kissing, ribbon cutting. We've got to get it to that level. So I think that is huge, and please keep that going.
Yeah.
And I would ask the other regional administrators to adopt that also.
Senator King will cut a ribbon anytime for a presentation.
Yes. As we talked, when you look at maintenance and preservation, I think we got to look at it as projects. And kind of what you did, you took 3 of them and put them together and came up with a project. I think from a legislative standpoint, that's a much easier sell, particularly if you're looking for revenue or those kinds of things. But we got to start looking at, these things as projects that relate. for some reason legislators seem to relate to that they can go back and say, look at the project I got for you. Much better than saying, oh, look at the maintenance I got for you, or look at the preservation I got for you. I think that would help us sell it.
Agreed.
Go ahead, Axel.
I'll just pile on to that. I went over Blue Pass several times this fall. I assume was what was going on, and that was a significant project. Just, I mean, anyone who's in traffic can tell the amount of work and what's going into that. So I would agree with what Senator just said. That's a great example of a great preservation project that, I mean, it was a huge project, and celebrate it, yeah.
Real quick, Will, is that something that WSDOT typically does, is combine if you have a bunch of close projects in the close proximity? I mean, combining those three projects like that?
Yes, not always, depending on the timing and depending on the location. Yeah, we try and get efficiencies where we can, and that was a good opportunity to do it.
Yeah, I mean, just coming from the labor side and speaking maybe from a contractor's perspective too. I mean, that's the efficiency, like you mentioned. I mean, that's where I think you're going to get your best bang for your buck. Go ahead, Will.
I just want to say that Mike Gribner's leadership as our new state engineer in recognizing that maintenance and preservation projects are subject to public relation benefits is something we ought to know. Because that's an initiative that's sort of been available for years and just hasn't been picked up on until Mike took the lead on that. So I very much appreciate it. But I got just two quick yes or no questions. One is, did Bierschbach show up? And more importantly, did Allison show up?
Bierschbach was not there, nor was Allison, no.
He's not going to get the big Y named after him.
All right, well, thank you very much. Give Chris a round of applause. And next we have Brian White. Brian's going to give us a presentation on his region, a very important project in his region.
Yeah, Billy asked me, thanks, Billy, to give an update on the Vantage Bridge project because it's really a project that affects us all. It is a preservation project. I'm kind of waiting for Noel to get it. There we go. So I always like to remind people I'm in the South Central region. We start over in North Bend. We go through the Cle-Elum-Ellensburg area, through Yakima, down to Walla Walla, through the Tri-Cities, and then into Clarkson. So we have a very large area that we're responsible for. Obviously, Tri-Cities being our big, large metropolitan area that we work with. And then we work with Oregon and Idaho as well. And unfortunately, I got to work with Chris and Todd because their regions border mine. So there's always some challenges there. But I-90 is what connects all three of us. I-90 is the largest interstate in the United States. It actually starts in our deep water ports in Seattle and goes all the way to Boston, Massachusetts. Why it's important for us on the east side is we use that route to transfer all our agricultural products to the port. So very important road to us. And next year, one of those key links, the Vantage Bridge at Vantage, is going to get its deck replaced. And we're talking a deck replacement, not an overlay, not a pothole patcher. We are replacing the whole deck, which will be challenging for us and will take about 3 years to complete. This bridge is kind of unique. It's actually built partly on a fill material, and then you have the truss bridge out into a part of the channel as well. And like I mentioned earlier, we border with North Central region, so we have close coordination on this project. We also have a state park. A lot agricultural uses this a lot. And then we have the Gorge Amphitheater that's just up the road from this bridge. So this is what we see right now. We see a lot of potholes forming on the bridge deck. This bridge was built back in 1962, so it's just a little older than I am. I'm happy to report. It had its last major overhaul in 1982, but it is an ongoing maintenance effort for us to maintain this bridge and keep it open for the public as well as agriculture. We on the holiday weekends, we can see up to 50,000 vehicles trying to come over I-90. And so that's when the potholes like to appear on the bridge. And so calling out our bridge deck crew, our region-wide bridge deck crew to go out and repair it, usually on Friday and Saturday. And they usually have to take a lane, which translates into backed up traffic on I-90. So some of the challenges is just keeping the bridge open during construction. We are going to shut it down to one lane in each direction. So you can imagine that's going to cause some issues. There's emergency services issues in this area. There's not a lot of routes on my side to get to the bridge other than the Kittitas County Highway. So emergency services is very concerned about this because usually a couple times a year, the public likes to set the roadway on fire, either on my side of the river or on Chris's side. And so making sure that the first responders can get to those areas is crucial. And, you know, the fire issue is one thing, but we get a lot of high wind in this area. And so that really whips that fire up very quickly. And so we've had a couple tabletop exercises with the local fire departments to come up with some better solutions. And hopefully, once we get into construction, we'll be able to put those into action. So we're looking at taking out the bridge deck, and we're also looking at doing some column repair as well as replacing the struts. Like I mentioned, we're going to take out the whole panel, doing one side at a time. I think this next one kind of shows it. So taking out the one side and then flipping over after we do the precast panels and doing the other side. And I got kind of this is just kind of a typical section, what it'll look like during construction. So we'll be working on probably the eastbound lanes first, and then we'll have both traffic in the westbound lanes and then barriers separating them. And then once we get done with that side, the contractor will move to the other side and work their way across the bridge. So we do plan on having the bridge open during the major holiday weekends like 4th of July, Labor Day, Memorial Day. We anticipate the contractor will shut down during the winter because it gets a little cold out there with that wind. So, and then they'll start back up in the springtime. And we also have 3 locations. This is just kind of an aerial that the contractor can stage out of. We don't anticipate these being a big impact to the traveling public, but I thought I'd mention it. So one of the exciting things about this project is we are going to use some of the new iCone technology, and that is trying to provide real-time information to the traveling public at strategic locations so they can make the decisions whether they want to continue onto the bridge and go through, try to get through the bridge, or detour around the bridge. So this would be one of the detour routes at George. You can make the decision to detour through Wenatchee, maybe stop and see Chris, and then go on your way to Spokane. We anticipate that this detour would take about an hour and a half longer if you were to take it, but it is a lot more rural roads that you would be driving down. So, and in a minute here, I'll show you some of the other impacts that you might encounter. The route that I'm suggesting folks to take is to go 395 through the Tri-Cities. You're on a 4-lane interstate facility. And yes, Noel, you can travel at 70 miles an hour so that you can get to those locations. And you have all the services, right? Food, bathroom, whatever you need to do. And we would have travel signs in the Ellensburg area at 82 there, so you can make that decision. So that's our thought. Unfortunately, if you decide to follow your phone and go one of those shorter routes that your phone suggests, you might run into some of these orange dots or these lines. And this is the North Central, Eastern, and South Central region all together. We're doing work on other roadways, believe it or not. And so you might run into some of those locations. So here we are. We did advertise. We opened bids last month, and we were about the $10 million over. Our load contractor is Garco. We've talked to headquarters and they are willing to give us the additional funding to start. So we anticipate starting in 2024 next year. So you now have been adequately warned. Do not call me if you're stuck in traffic, because you've been warned that there will be backups next year. But we anticipate they'll be done around 2027. Just depends on how, the project goes. We have not seen a schedule from them yet. So this is just what we're thinking is going to happen. So that's where we are on Vantage,
So $10 million, you just got to call up headquarters and they find.
Well, that was a gamble whether we were going to get that or not. I actually anticipated that the bids were going to come in more because of some of the questions we were getting from contractors about, can we leave the roadway closed during the winter time? And we said, no, that's not acceptable. Wanting longer time to look at some of the things. The project's been out for 6 weeks.
A groundbreaking on this or a ribbon cutting?
I haven't really decided yet. you know,
A lot of legislators interested in it.
but they have to travel to Vantage. So,
Wow.
you know, there is a plan development there for a new hotel and stuff, but that hasn't materialized yet.
Very vulnerable on that bridge deck.
But Brian, you know, I mentioned that we stopped advertising all preservation projects in the state in August. That was part of that decision was we still had
Right.
some projects out on ad and we didn't know where the bids were kind of going to come in. So we needed to stop that. So we had that flexibility for things like this.
And I appreciate Chris losing some of his projects. I also lost some projects. I'm sure Todd did as well, but.
So what's the total budget for?
So this one's going to be about 69 million. Yeah. So if you need information, you can always go to our WSDOT webpage. I always like to kind of close with this. You can get real-time information from our travel graphs. You can go online to some of the open houses, of course, where would we be without social media? So you'll be able to kind of keep track it that way. My personal favorite is our WSDOT app. You can get information on highway closures and know what's going on the roadway. If you still use your AM radio, you can get information on the road on 1610 and 530. So that ends this part about Vantage. I added a couple slides and I want to say I was a genius for doing this. But work zone speed limits, I really want to give a thank you to Senator King and Billy Wallace and Dave Gent. They were all part of the USI group, which kind of came from our WAPA, WSDOT highway safety group that looks at work zones. And Mark Otley and I were co-chairs on that. We kind of came up with this idea. One of the last projects that was used for Department of Transportation was the I-90 Snoqualmie Pass East project on Phase 1C. And we found that tool to be one of the most effective tools for us to seeing slowdowns on Snoqualmie Pass. And so they were able to work with the USI group to get this funded. So coming next year to a construction zone near you will be these speed cameras that will be out there. And my understanding is that the first ticket is not actually a ticket, but a warning. And then the second ticket is the one, and it's a traffic infraction. It's not actually a speed limit ticket.
Right.
Yeah. And so that money will be collected and that'll go for driver safety and then maybe some Washington State Patrol emphasis patrols as well. So really appreciate the work that this group did, and it was all part of the laborers union, which we are at today. So I'm very excited to see that because for us, it helps all of us. It helps make sure my folks get home, all my inspectors, as well as the laborers and the contractors folks, and it keeps the traveling public safe. And you can ask any of the regional administrators here. What we're seeing out on the roadway is really bad behavior by the traveling public, whether it's speeding or just aggressive driving. I think people have forgotten about defensive driving. They think it's aggressive driving. So we see that in a lot of our work zones. So I'm really happy that we're going to see this year.
Those are the two leaders right there. Those are the guys that got it.
Well, no, this is a huge team effort, Dave. A lot of people get credit on this. Because all of us together, USI, WAPA, WSDOT, we all got on the same page and pushed forward with this. And it's just a matter of working through it. It's gone nationally now. I mean, Mallory and I have traveled several times across the country to do presentations. That's how impactful it is. So thank you guys for everything you did.
It started with Senator King picking up the phone when you called, you know.
Yes, it did.
Right.
It's all about the partnerships.
It took everybody though.
It's all about the partnerships. You know,
Absolutely.
we would not have our I-90 Snoqualmie Pass East project without partnerships. And so seeing this is just another example of we've got to be able to work together to get these big projects done.
Your wildlife overpass is
That's right.
an example of.
Yep.
Once that was agreed to, then they agreed to everything else. I mean, it's what life should be all about.
Right.
It always is.
Your question.
I did. The route that you were talking, I got, I was looking at going to Spokane, so I can either go through Ellensburg or I can go out through Moxie, and I think that's Highway 12, or I can go down the Tri-Cities. I always thought going to the Tri-Cities, it's gotta be, an hour longer. I mean, it's 15 minutes.
Yeah.
To do the route, different than going through Moxie or going through, it's nothing.
It looks like this long circuitous route, but
Yeah.
because it's an interstate and the volumes, you can make it a lot faster and,
Well, you can drive 70 miles an hour,
Yeah, I was wondering if you increase the speed limits through.
and that's, most people do on Highway 12 anyway, which isn't always great. It's interesting to me because
yeah.
people don't realize.
A lot of people say, well, I'm going to go over 24 and out through Othello. The only issue is the Vernita Bridge is starting to get in the same condition as the Vantage Bridge, which goes back to everything we've been talking about
Yeah.
today about the funding of preservation and getting this work done. So.
Good job.
Great job.
Thank you, Brian. We have one more